1 minute, your child is giddy with laughter. The next, she's raging or crying. What's going on? Find out next on Keeping Kids Healthy. Hello, I'm Dr. Winnie King, and I'm here with some experts on childhood mood disorders in the lobby of the Children's Hospital at Montefiore in New York City. Now, your child is on top of the world, laughing, excited, full of confidence. Next thing you know, he's talking about suicide. Now, there might be tantrums, crying, even threats of violence. What could possibly be happening? Well, the answer might be bipolar disorder, which used to be called manic depression. Now, that diagnosis in children has increased in the past 10 years, but there's still some question about what exactly the symptoms are. Now, 12-year-old Kevin has been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and he told us what it's like from the inside.
It's like a cycle you go through every day. You start out happy at the top, you usually crash down to the bottom, go to the middle, where is a normal, and then you go to really happy, then you crash down, and you do that over and over again.
In first grade, that was the year that we actually had him evaluated by a psychiatrist. That was the first signs where he was actually banging his head against a wall, saying that he wanted to be dead, give me a knife, I want to stab myself, and things like that. I mean, the children just don't say things like that.
For some reason, your mind tells you you don't want to feel better, you want to feel this way, but really you don't, and you want to get better, but your mind overcomes your whole body and tells you not to. When you're angry, you don't want anybody to help you, you just get so mad and you just want to destroy everything.
We have had problems with him in public school where he would kick his chair over, he would be defiant to the teacher. He will say, you know, I know better than you. Sometimes he would throw things. It came to a point where the school was not able to have him in the classroom anymore.
I've done so many things. I've thrown things. I have picked up knives and threatened. I've punched people. But I've never actually really tried to actually hurt somebody. When I throw punches, I either go for the chest so I don't hurt people. I never go for the face. And I try it and scare people away so I can be myself and calm down. Hot dogs up there?
If he felt in any way threatened himself, or if he felt angry in a way, sometimes he would pull out a knife, he would pick up a brick. Those are the scariest times. Those are the times that I know sometimes you can't always talk him out of it. It's almost like he shuts down a little bit and he can't think. And it's really that he needs you to stay away, go inside himself and figure out where he needs to go to get out of this feeling of anger.
Sure.
I don't think he really intends to hurt anybody. I think he knows the difference between this is wrong, but I don't know any way else how to do it.
You remember some parts, and you remember the bad parts of what you did, but you don't remember how it started or like how it moved on. It's like a bad dream.
And do you want onions with it or not? Chopped onion? No.
He can be extremely giddy and happy, and it gets to be overly happy.
It's feeling better than you could ever feel before. You just feel like compassion of everything around you. And then when you get mad, you feel a hate of everything around you. But when you're really, really happy, you can get mad much easier. So I'm really vulnerable when I'm really happy.
The mood swings with Kevin, they happen pretty quickly.
It's hard because it's like you know what's going to happen. You don't know when it's going to happen, but it just happens. It's like having two different, like your brains are split up. One's a good side and one's a bad side. And one side is telling you, don't get mad, and the other side's telling you, get mad. So it's like a constant war in your head. I don't really think about what's going to happen that day. I just see how the day's going to go on. I just go with the day.
He's such a bright kid. He loves the outdoors. He loves rocks and bugs and hiking and fishing. And he really is a type of person that finds so many wonderful joys of life. And this is just a side of him that he's learning to live with. We all are learning to live with it. It's a daily struggle every day.
Well, Kevin and his mom are here with us. And Kevin, do you feel like you've managed to get control over those explosions with time?
Well, no, not everyone, but my medicine really helps with it. Before my medicine, I wasn't in control of anyone, anytime. Yeah. But now with my medicine, I am incapable of controlling some of them.
Some of them, but not all of them.
Not all of them.
Yeah, well, you know, I appreciate you being honest about that because we really want to understand how this affects people. Well, I want you to meet Dr. Gay Carlson. She teaches psychiatry and pediatrics at Stony Brook's University's School of Medicine. And Gay, you know, we've seen what this looks like, but what exactly is bipolar disorder and how is it different in children?
Bipolar disorder is a diagnosis, and for people that don't understand what diagnosis means, it's a group of signs, of symptoms and behaviors that hang together in a consistent way that hopefully allows us to predict what kind of treatment and future the person will have. Bipolar disorder started out as a way to classify depression, serious depression, very sad, low mood, hating yourself, but having no real reason to do so, having no energy, wishing you were dead, not being able to think straight because your thoughts were so slowed. Doctors began to realize that there were some people who had opposite parts with their depression. They had, instead of a low mood, a really high and elated mood. Instead of low energy, excessive energy. Instead of feeling terrible about themselves, they were grandiose. They felt supremely powerful. Instead of sleeping all the time, they couldn't sleep at all. And so that's how this diagnosis of bipolar disorder got born. In adults, they have periods of depression, mania, and then they come back to normal. And those periods last for several weeks, even several months. In children, especially children below the age of 12, those episodes seem like they're much faster, they're much shorter. There are many other things for it to be confused with, which is part of the problem with the diagnosis of bipolar disorder.
Well, is this something that kids are born with?
Probably. It seems it's a genetic disorder, and so the genes for it are going to be present from birth.
Well, I know there appears to be some controversy about this diagnosis in children and whether or not the rages represent the extremes of emotion in bipolar, right?
Think of rages like a high fever. You can get a high fever in a number of different disorders. If you have a high fever, it's serious. Doesn't mean it's a diagnosis.
Right.
The same thing is true for rages. People can have rages when they're manic, they can have rages when they're depressed, they can have rages when they're anxious, they can have rages when they're autistic, they can have rages when they're oppositional defiant, they can have rages when they're schizophrenic. So the fact is, rages is a serious problem, but it doesn't necessarily mean the person's bipolar.
And a child that is bipolar can also have other diagnoses as well that can sort of coexist at the same time.
That's right, and that's where the term comorbidity comes from. You can have a diagnosis that looks like bipolar disorder that isn't. Bipolar disorder can look like something else, and you can have two disorders at the same time, one of which is bipolar disorder.
Boy, that can be so confusing.
Absolutely.
And if a child with bipolar is misdiagnosed and put on the wrong medication, that can be a problem.
Right. And the misdiagnosis can go both ways. If you call somebody bipolar who isn't, you prevent him from having medications and treatments he or she should have, and the converse is true. If you don't diagnose it when it's there, you can withhold the appropriate treatments and the person will stay sicker longer.
Well, Loretta, we just heard Kevin say that he at least has some degree of control on the medication. Have you found that to be true, just observing him before medication and after?
Absolutely. Before medication, Kevin would break out into rages. With the medication, within several days, it was actually very quick for him. And he even told me at the age of 8 that he never knew what it was like not to feel angry before. And we saw a change in him right away.
Well, how do parents make sure that their children aren't wrongly diagnosed?
That's a really important and not easy to answer question. But given all the complexities that we just talked about, a good doctor is going to spend time with a parent finding out the symptoms of mania and depression and all the other comorbidities. Going to spend time talking to the child and finding out how he feels. Going to get information from teachers. Going to get past evaluations from psychologists, or ask for current evaluations because this impacts a child's performance in school. It takes several hours to make a diagnosis. You may need to see the person several times, and it sometimes will take several months or even several years before you can be certain of the diagnosis.
So this is
It's
a
not
very
easy.
intense process.
It is.
Well, 13-year-old Eva Kemp has also been diagnosed as bipolar, but she really doesn't have the classic symptoms of mania or euphoria. Let's take a look at her story.
Come on, Bill. Billy.
One of the teachers had asked me, did I ever think about ADHD with Eva? She fidgets, she's not paying attention, she's not able to focus. She was diagnosed with ADHD and she was started on short-acting Ritalin at that point, which we did get reports back from the teacher that, you know, it seemed to be working.
Good girl. Good girl. Brookie.
And then we started to see the depression and the high anxiety. She would cry very easily. You could look at her wrong and she would cry. So then we had to add the antidepressants.
I think it's when I was 7. Well, when I was 7, when I started thinking about wanting to not be around.
Up in the morning, outside, argument with her sister, slamming doors, banging doors, crying, screaming. 10 minutes later, back outside, having fun. We saw a lot of destruction in her bedroom. Just through the course of the day, it got exhausting.
I would stomp, slam doors, yell, scream.
And one of these crying jags, she got, just before she was hospitalized, got so bad that she just actually laid in my arms, not speaking, not able to speak. I don't know how many times, my husband and I would look at each other like, what do we do? Do we take her to the hospital? Where do you go?
School was difficult for Eva.
They would make fun of me. Eva, why do you take medication? Oh, I know why, because you're stupid. One day after school, I had enough. I just didn't want to be around it anymore, and I knew that I needed to find a way. I was thinking, if I jumped out of the tree without the trampoline, what would it be like? But I really didn't want to hurt myself, so I put the trampoline there just for protection. So I climbed up to the tree and went down.
She didn't want to live. She asked me to put her to sleep, and she was eventually hospitalized at that time because it got so bad. You feel like you're not a good parent because your kid hurts so much. You feel like, there's got to be something I can do, and why didn't I see it sooner? Why did it get so bad?
Eva was eventually diagnosed with bipolar disorder.
It takes a long time to realize that you can't control their thoughts, and you just have to love and work with them, but that whole process was extremely scary. It's horrifying just to see your child hurt that bad. So we started to look into the mood stabilizing drugs, and seems to be working well. The mood swings are there, but they're not anywhere near what they were.
I don't mean to be mean and hit you. I get frustrated.
Are you frustrated at her or something else? You never know from one minute to the next what's going to happen. You have to take it, not even one day at a time. It's hour by hour. It's very difficult to try and keep peace. It can put a strain everywhere. It puts a strain between mother and father, husband and wife, outside relatives, and friends. They don't understand what you're going through.
Family therapy helps the Kemps work through their problems.
Do you get mad when she gets all the attention?
No, because I know she's got problems and I know she needs attention.
And Mommy and Daddy are trying to help her, right?
Yeah.
And Mom and Dad are there for you too, right?
Yeah.
Well, Eva and Barb are here with us now, and Eva, it was really amazing to hear you talk about wanting to hurt yourself. Do you still have thoughts of suicide?
I do when I get frustrated, upset, angry, and I am that way for a little while. But I don't put a lot of thought into them as I did then.
Yeah. It's not on your mind as much as it used to be. Eva's story, this is a situation where she could have easily, sort of been misdiagnosed. How could other doctors have diagnosed her symptoms?
One of the things that people are trying to come to terms with bipolar is it's a part of a spectrum. Remember I told you about the depression, the fact that it started out being some people have depressions, that's all they ever have. The more manic symptoms that come into it, the more you fit into the bipolar spectrum. Some people are very conservative and say, unless you have a full-blown manic episode, you're not bipolar. Other people say, well, if you have just a little bit of giddiness or silliness, that means you're on the bipolar spectrum. So I think that's part of the confusion, and of course the difficulty is what are the implications? Because if you're very, very depressed, then you may need something to help that depression, but if that something is going to flip you into a bipolar episode, that's where the difficulty comes with the implications of the diagnosis.
Yeah. Well, Barb, we all heard, about the emotional swings that Eva's been going through. What type of parenting tools did you use to sort of deal with that?
We work closely with our therapist on a regular basis, and she gives us some tools. One of the things that we do with Eva is to get her to try and refocus. If they're in a manic state, the kids have a hard time focusing on what's at hand. So breathing works with Eva. If we can get her to look in our eyes and work with us to slow breathe, it tends to help us be able to work with her because it changes her thought process.
Yeah, it kind of shifts her in a different direction.
Yes.
What about you, Loretta?
I find sometimes the natural instinct of a parent when a child's going through that is to try to overly help them, and you try to work with them, and sometimes that too much attention, too much speaking to them during that time can actually hinder getting them through it. And what I find really is giving him more space, actually letting him work through it himself, not being around him, let him be alone, and let him calm himself down tends to work best.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Jill Goldberg Arnold is a psychologist who works with bipolar kids and is the author of Raising a Moody Child. And boy, what a great title for a book, right? What should parents be considering when they're trying to discipline a child that's bipolar?
I like to talk about can't behavior versus won't behavior. So can't behavior is when a child can't meet the expectations you're asking them to meet. Like when a child's energy level skyrockets later in the day, maybe they can't sit still for dinner or they can't settle down by bedtime. Won't behavior is when a child can meet expectations but refuses to. Like when a perfectly calm child is watching TV, you ask them to turn it off and they go into a rage. Once parents can separate out can't from won't, then they can make a game plan for dealing with each. And that's where the treatment team becomes really important in helping to make that plan.
Yeah, well, speaking of treatment, Gay, as a medical doctor, what can you offer these kids?
There are 4 things that I think you should expect from at least a child psychiatrist. A good diagnosis. Once you make the diagnosis, informing the parent and the child what the problems are, what they can expect in the future. Good medication treatment. And coordinating the interdisciplinary team that's really necessary to manage all the phases of this condition, which include the therapy aspects. Not just doing it, not necessarily doing it, but knowing who to call. Getting the school involved, because the school is often a necessary component of it. A good child psychiatrist needs to orchestrate all those parts.
And I think also maybe be good in giving education to the family.
Well, that's the educational piece of understanding what the condition is and what you can expect from it, which is also something that Jill does with her therapy.
Well, let's talk about that, Jill. What as a psychologist can you offer a bipolar child?
Depending on where the family is. So if a family comes to me and they're new to the diagnosis, the first thing I'm going to do is get them educated. Because the more a child and the family understand about the illness, its symptoms, and how to treat it, the better able they are to see symptoms as problems that they can solve. For example, if they're having a lot of trouble with sleep, which causes immense family stress, therapy could focus on that. When symptoms are more controlled, then treatment can shift to dealing with related problems, like peer problems, which are very common in this population. And then we might work one-on-one, we might do some coaching with parents, we might work with a school, we might do a lot of things.
Yeah. Well, Barb and Loretta, therapy certainly was crucial for you guys, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Can you expound on what it meant to you?
Well, I think when someone enters with a therapist or someone that they're going to work through their feelings, they need to do it as a family unit. Everybody's apart and everybody has their things that they need to work with, siblings, the child themselves, and the parents as parents, and the parents as a couple.
And Loretta, perhaps having an outside person that can sort of mediate, as everybody's got their own emotions about this whole thing, can be helpful.
Absolutely, because you try to do what you can as a parent, but you also have certain emotions involved with that. And I find that we always want to look at what happens on a daily basis. He's maturing, different things happen in his life, and different instances that he has to look at how to deal with those as he matures and grows.
Yeah.
And those are things that it's nice to have an outside opinion as well.
Yeah, well, sometimes simply keeping your bipolar child alive is an accomplishment in itself. I want you to meet the Ross family.
Parker came into the world with an intensity that surprised everybody in the delivery room. He literally slugged the obstetrician on the way out. I describe his tantrums well beyond what normal tantrums were. They were prolonged, they were intense, and even as young as 3, my biggest fear was Parker killing himself. In 3rd grade, he became suicidal. He started talking about, I want to be dead. I'd have to hold him for hours at a time just to keep him from hurting himself. We had to lock every knife, every sharp object we had in the trunk of our car. The way we lived is just indescribable. We had to strip down his room to make it safe. He wrote me notes, "I love you, Mommy, but I want to die," at 8. This was 8.
There was one time when he tried to jump out of the window of a friend's house in school when he was that young. Yeah. And that was a first shock for us.
Yeah. I noticed he would get giddy and laugh a lot where his friends could stop laughing. He would laugh a lot longer.
Extremely hyper.
And inappropriately happy and giddy. His neurologist was the first to suggest that he might have pediatric bipolar disorder.
Parker was losing touch with reality.
He was hearing voices. We could not reach him. Yeah. He would look at me and say, "I want to kill you. I'm going to kill you." His artwork was frightening. 10th grade, Parker stopped taking his medication, and we didn't realize
we didn't know
that.
it. We would jump out of our skin every time the phone rang. I remember hearing a phone call once that Parker was arrested and to get home fast, or else come home quickly. Parker cut himself. Come home quickly. Parker tried to jump off the bridge.
He did jump off the bridge.
Yeah, I guess when you feel a little too good and you get a little excited, you get hyper, and you could be jumping around everywhere, doing stuff like jumping off bridges and stuff, which is fun. So, I don't know. I guess it was kind of stupid too, though.
To see him punch a hole through the wall every time he got upset about something, it was very scary. And I was just worried Lolly would be in danger. What happened was, it culminated into a nervous breakdown for me. And I remember driving down the highway and I thought, God, if I just don't turn the wheel, my problems are over, you know? And then, of course, I thought about my family and stuff like that.
I don't know, if I'm, really frustrated and like I'm really worked up, then I won't really recognize that I'm, upset. Because I'll be so focused on, the situation. Hit things and throw things around, kick things, whatever. You're just out of control. You go into like a little rage, you want to, hit whatever's close by, you yell at people.
We had to hospitalize him. This was all in 10th grade. That was the first of 4 hospitalizations. They were very traumatic. And that was the first of 4 arrests during 4 months. The schools finally said to us he needs residential placement, which was the saddest 16 months of our lives.
I don't know, I was doing pretty bad and stuff a while ago, and it was mainly just like what it was doing to my friends and family. Which made me realize, I'm like on my last chance. Gotta start change what I'm doing now or get in trouble.
Hands up, and when you point, you bring your hands up.
And now he has an incredible boxing coach who's probably the most therapeutic person and activity that he could be doing right now.
So Parker's learning self-control. His self-esteem has just skyrocketed.
Controlling your mood sometimes can be hard. Half of it I can control, and a little more than half of it. And some of it, though, some of the medication I'm on helps me a little bit with it. Basically, it's your choice. If you want to do something, you could definitely do it. If you don't want to do it, though, no one could really make you do it.
It's been a very, very difficult road.
Wow, what a story. Among the many issues that Parker's story raises is the impact that this has on parents. Jill, what can parents do to take care of themselves?
First and foremost, that means getting social support, whether it's through friends and family or through community agencies, online support. This is a long haul. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. So taking care of themselves is critical. They need to make sure they're sharing parental responsibilities, getting time with their spouse or their partner or their friends. And parents can engage in what we call free medicines, things that they don't have side effects, they don't have monetary cost. Good sleeping habits, good eating habits, good exercise habits, writing in a journal, accessing their spiritual sides, and engaging their sense of humor.
I would imagine, Barb, that this could be really tough as a parent. You're a parent, so you're so focused on the baby, the child. You want them to be well, and you forget about yourself. Did you find yourself doing that, sort of slipping into being such an advocate for the child you weren't taking care of yourself?
Absolutely, especially in the beginning because you're trying to work things out.
Yeah. How about you, Loretta?
Absolutely, and you also you're worried about a lot of different aspects. You're worried about siblings. You're worried about your job, and you're worried about your child, and sometimes you feel the stress of that. So
yeah,
you
it can be really tough. Well, we've just got a few seconds left, Gabe, but I want to just ask you briefly about the idea of using medications for bipolar. I mean, parents are nervous about putting their kids on drugs. Can a child get through this without medication?
Probably not, and medication is an extremely important component. That said, there's no free lunch. Medications have side effects. Parents need to be informed about the side effects. People misinterpret side effects of medications. They sometimes want to make a diagnosis depending on if a child has a bad response to medication. H.L. Mencken has a wonderful quote: "Every complex problem has a simple solution, and it's often wrong."
Yeah.
So people who have a glib solution to bipolar disorder in children, I give them a wide berth.
Sure. Well, it's very obvious that this is a very complex problem. Okay, well, unfortunately, we're out of time today. But on an upcoming Keeping Kids Healthy, we'll show you how parents can work with the schools to handle mental health issues, how to deal with a child's hospitalization, and what a parent can do to survive this emotionally themselves. In the meantime, though, check out the Children and Adolescent Bipolar Foundation, and their website is bpkids.org. The phone number is 847-256-8525. And the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, their web address is acap.org. The number is 202-966-7300. And, of course, our website, keepingkidshealthy.org. Thanks so much to all of you for being here on the show with me today, and we will see you next time on Keeping Kids Healthy.
For more on today's topics, visit keepingkidshealthy.org.